I'm Tim Churchill from Tim Talk, and today I'm with Alan Waters, who is an independent candidate seeking election to the United States Senate for Massachusetts. The seat is currently held by Democrat Elizabeth Warren. As of right now, a primary election date has been set for September 4th, with the general election on November 6th. Mr. Waters, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to meet you and visit with you today.
Nice to meet you, too.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, you know, I am a resident of Mashpee, Massachusetts. That's on Cape Cod, right next to Falmouth. I've been there for 13 years. I'm a family man. I have a young family at home, and I have been an investment consultant for over 50 years. I've taken some time off of my career to run for office. I've ran for state senate, Cape and Islands, in 2014. That was my neophyte run. I had never ran before. And as you know, today I'm running for U.S. Senate.
Nice. Can you tell us a little bit about what the responsibilities of a U.S. Senator are?
Well, the most important thing is to be able to write law, federal law, for the country to benefit its citizens, as well as do investigations and other things to make sure that the country's being run right. You know, as you know, there's three branches of government. You have the administration, you have the Congress, and of course you have the court system. And so their job is to work with the representatives as well as among themselves in different departments. And when there needs to be law established or things to be investigated in order that the American people, their government's running right, that's what they do.
Nice. Can you tell us if you have a special reason for running for U.S. Senator?
Absolutely. You know, it's a great personal sacrifice to run for office, especially statewide. But you know, one of the things that have always concerned me is the direction of the United States of America. You know, this is still the best country in the world, but it's not without its own challenges. For instance, we have a budget. We constantly run budget deficits, but our country's debt is over $20 trillion. That's a great concern because we're leaving debt today for perhaps our children and grandchildren, perhaps your children and grandchildren one day and beyond. And at the moment, we can handle that debt, but that can change. So it's things like that that really concern me. I'm also concerned that I would say my politics are conservative. I would say someone would consider me moderately conservative because I have conservative values like fiscal values. But I believe that we have social responsibility as well as environmental responsibility. And one of the reasons why I'm an independent is that I want to be able to work with both sides of the aisle to do what I think is best for the American people. And I don't think that ordinary Americans, whether you're poor or moderate or middle class, that we always get the best representation in the United States Senate because there's a lot of little difficulties. For instance, we have senators that stay there term after term. I believe that perhaps changing that so that maybe a senator should only be there for 2 terms or something like that, et cetera, so that we get new blood and new ideas in there. Unfortunately, our problem is I think people stay in the seat too long. Term limits would help.
Yeah, nice. And then that brings me to my next question. Your answer kind of ties into this. What do you think are some bipartisan issues that Republicans and Democrats can both make progress on?
Well, some of those issues have already passed last year, but I think they should be readdressed. For instance, Obamacare, our public, the healthcare system that was devised during the Obama administration, the Republicans were going to try to fix it, perhaps to what their standards and ideas were. But in any case, our health system is not really doing the full job for the American people. There's still people that are either paying too much for their premiums. For instance, if you may know some people that have their own business. Maybe they have, it could be a painting business or a garage, or could be something that's technology, but not many employees. Maybe a mom and pop shop. If you make too much money, you have to go out into the marketplace and pay for your own health insurance versus working for someone. The problem with that is that some of it's very expensive. People are almost being impoverished because they have a certain income level. I can't actually quote that level, but let's say if you're making over 50, your family of 4 is making over $50,000, you have to go and get your own insurance or whatever. Those are problems because they're still hurting a range of American people.
Nice. In your words, can you tell us, what do you think the 3 greatest priorities in the United States are right now?
The priorities of the United States are my priorities, and let me explain. I believe that we need to continue to grow the economy. We need to continue to grow the economy because people need jobs. People need jobs and better paying jobs so that we can re-expand the middle class. Unfortunately, especially after the recession that we had in 2008, the middle class is no longer the majority in America. That meant that, well, there's always a certain subset of people that are wealthy or high, upper middle class, and then you have a lot of people that are poor to moderate. That's not good for America. We want people that are poor to moderate income to be able to work and apply that to earn their own money instead of depending on government assistance, and make enough money so that they too can enjoy the benefits of being at a higher income and in the middle class, perhaps owning their own home and, you know, doing things that regular folks like to do versus having to struggle and depend on the government, things like that. Also, lastly, Tim, we need to grow the economy, but we also need to protect our American culture. We're based on the Constitution of the United States. The people that developed and wrote the Constitution, they were using Judeo-Christian principles. You know, many of them were Christians, and they wrote it from perhaps that perspective. But the Constitution is our guide to continue to make this a great nation. And so, and our culture is based on that. So we need to protect those things. And lastly, we need to protect the American people. That's what government, one of the primary things the government is there, okay? But it's not just from physical harm. It's also from financial harm. You know, that's why we have regulations so that we can make sure that people have disclosure, or that the banks or the brokerage firms or even the insurance are not intentionally harming individuals, their clients, for just the profit motive, okay? So again, I believe that we need to grow the economy, protect our American culture, protect the American people. That's what government's all about.
Nice, I agree with you. What are your thoughts on the current presidential administration? How do you think Mr. Trump's first year in office has gone?
Okay, I voted for President Trump. I voted for President Trump for a number of reasons, but I'd like to say I also voted for President Obama. So here's someone that's a Democrat, and here's someone that's a Republican. But back to your question. You know, I believe President Trump, his goals were to make America number one, especially for the American worker and the job front. And I think he's done a lot of things there to help that. We look at the treaties that we've made so that maybe they're written in a way that it's more fair to America. Certainly through Congress, we just passed a tax code, which he was in favor of. And so that lower interest rates are bringing money that was held overseas that was earned by our multinational corporations, et cetera. So the Trump administration has done a lot of good things. Of course, Trump, the person, sometimes may have a lot of people have some difficulty with perhaps some of his behaviors. But I look beyond that. As the next senator of Massachusetts, My job, and it should have been Elizabeth Warren's job, was not to be an obstructionist and on day one try to stop Trump before Trump did anything, because what he was trying to do was supposed to be helpful for the American people. So I plan to work with the president in order to benefit not just America, but make sure that the people of Massachusetts, the voter of Massachusetts, is not only being represented well in the halls of Congress, but also in the administration. It's about bringing home the bacon. That's a job, because presidents come and presidents go, but while they're there, get the most out of them for the people who voted for you, and that's what I'm about.
Nice, nice. Now, if you don't mind telling us, who were some of your role models growing up?
You know, I didn't have a lot of role models, but what I did was I had great parents. My mother's alive. By the way, I'm age 62. Not afraid to admit it, you know? And she's still alive in the house I grew up with. I'm a Providence native. She was a bookkeeper. She did payroll and kind of did the books for private schools and things, and had a great career. And she was the brains of the family. She's a hero of mine. My father, very interesting. He was an Army Ranger, an airborne ranger in Korea. Now, I'm an African American, and in Korea, there was 2 black men in the 8th, it was a Ranger company, and it was the very first one that was reactivated after World War II. And he and a gentleman named Will Clanton, my father was Alan Waters as well, they were the first African Americans to fight in active battle as the elite Rangers. So he was in the 8th Army Ranger Company in Korea. So obviously he survived. And he also was a motorcycle policeman in Providence. You know, it's something when you're a little young boy and you're watching your father maybe drive up for lunch in the police Harley Davidson. And he also was the first African American on motorcycle in the city of Providence. And so he came with not only great ethics and morals, but he was very straight, upward man, somebody really to admire. So I would say those were my best heroes, was my mother and father, because other than that, most people tend to disappoint you one way or another. But they did great. Mom's still doing fine.
It's pretty cool.
All right.
What skills do you think you have that you could bring to the Senate if you're elected?
Well, first of all, the U.S. Senate is not rocket science. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of people that are, maybe they're academic elites, maybe they were captains of industry, maybe they were politicians that worked their way up the ladder, so to speak, within their own states and towns, and were able to garner enough votes to win. But really, anyone with ethics and morality, you know, above average intelligence, perhaps, not necessarily having been some great and illustrious career, but good ethics, good morals, to be able to negotiate and work with someone. So what does that all mean? You know, I've been an investment consultant for over 30 years, so I understand how some of the markets work, economic type things. But I never made a lot of money. So I was not only a person that worked in Wall Street, for Wall Street firms. You know, there's plenty of times where I've had a second or third job to be able to feed my family. And see, we need regular people that know what it takes on the ground versus somebody that's abstract and no longer relates to the average American. One of the reasons that I ran, both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders ran populist campaigns. They ran campaigns that really appealed to the common man and woman. And you know, I consider myself in that category. And so sometimes you just have to step up. I'm at an age where I'm not really afraid of, you know, what's going to happen to my career. At some point in your life, you're not really that afraid of people anymore. A lot of people in Congress might be younger than me, you know, or the U.S. Senate. And so therefore, when you put all those things together, someone who has the heart, the energy, that has the intelligence, that has the feel for regular people, those are the type of things that I think are my best qualifications. Because you know what? Think of this. If you have a country that's $20 trillion in debt, we ran a tax code that lowered interest. Maybe that's great for business right now. It's going to add more to the debt. We just talked about that before. So here we are with 100 people in the U.S. Senate. And in many ways, they're not getting it done. We talked about health care. I think they could have went further with the tax code, and on and on. So I think that regular citizens who want to step up need to, even though the mountain may be steeper for us. That's what I'm all about. To be able to go in and say, you know what, when I walk in and I talk to the people on the street, I'm actually them, not someone that is just pandering for votes.
Nice, that's good to hear. What are your thoughts on the mainstream media?
I'm very concerned about liberty and freedom in this country as it relates to the media. You see, many of our major newspapers from coast to coast, from the Boston Globe to the Los Angeles Times, Chicago, Miami Herald, many of these newspapers, Washington Post as well, they tend to lean towards the left, towards the liberal progressives. They tend to write negatively about almost another half of America, which are people that are moderately conservative, and very conservative. Certainly, they continue to attack the president in a way that, are you there to report the news in a balanced and fair way or not? So I believe that it really endangers our republic when the average person cannot trust the news because it's written in an unfair sometimes, but definitely in unbalanced manner.
It's nice to hear someone come on and actually say that. What changes would you like to see in Massachusetts in the next 5 years?
Well, you know, I've been running for a year. First, I was actually running as a Republican. That's how I started. I'm an independent now. I left the Republican Party for various reasons. But one thing for sure is what I want to see with the state of Massachusetts is this. There's still a lot of people in poverty or near poverty from the inner city to the western countrysides. Let me explain. Just in December, the Boston Globe wrote an article. It was a series of articles over a week about blacks in Boston. And one of the daily series that they wrote was this. The average black in Boston, black person in Boston, has an average net worth between their assets, what they own, perhaps their debt, etc., of $8. That is, I like to say, a double cheeseburger with large fries and a Coke. That's their average net worth. Now think about this. This is a democratic state, right? It's been that way for a long time. And African Americans, Latinos, people of color, like myself, have been voting for one party in majority for decades. But if you've been voting for one party, I'm not saying that party's bad or good, but you've been voting for one party, and the results are, after all these years, that the net worth of people who've been voting for you, loyal, believing in your values and what you say, are only worth $8, there's a problem there, okay? No. But blacks and Latinos, they're only, at most, all minorities are about 20% of the state. So, you know, the rest is white people, 80%. But back to what I wanted to say. But once you get away from the inner cities, out into the countryside where there's very few minorities, that migrations are changing. You still have vast pockets in Massachusetts of white poverty. Those are some of the people that maybe feel left out for generations. Maybe when factories left, you know, before you were born, you know, whatever those reasons are, they're trapped in cycle of poverty, just like the people in the inner city. As the next senator of Massachusetts, I don't want to ignore that. You know, any state, any nation is only as strong as its weakest link. We need to be able to help people help themselves, to push and pull in order to incentivize them and help them. So again, to maybe more people qualifying for the middle class and less people. I'm going to be that senator that's going to, you'll see me more in Massachusetts than probably any other senator, and I'll be talking a lot about where I see the inequities. And so I don't want to just take people's tax money and give it away, but what I would like to see is, while we're expanding the economy, have training so that people can qualify for better paying jobs, et cetera. You know? So those are the type of things that I'm thinking about as I see in Massachusetts. The biggest thing is also we're Boston-centric. And I'll be brief, because I know you want to move on. We only have a half hour. But a lot of what we used to call a long time ago a sort of a Massachusetts miracle is Boston metro-centric. But when you get out of Boston, especially Worcester and beyond, or where I live on the South Coast, again, there's a lot of cities and a lot of towns where it looks like time stood still. You know, so we have the Emerald City, Boston, and then we have a lot of also rans of places that aren't growing there. Not quite dead, but they're not alive either. So we need to be able to think about how we're going to spread that economy beyond what we think of the Boston area, so other places will continue to benefit, you know. So those are the type of things that I see.
Nice. What would you most want voters to know about you?
Well, you know, every day that I wake up, I consider myself a person who walks a righteous path. That's not necessarily just a religious thing. That's not what I'm saying. But I try to follow what's the right thing to do, you know. And I want them to know to vote for me, because I'm a person that not only cares about the individual, but I always try to walk the right walk every day. You see, the problem with a lot of government, whether it's Beacon Hill or whether it's some local governments and towns and governments, especially in Congress, that we have a lot of waste and fraud and abuse. There's a lot of corruption, and I feel I'm that person that is the least likely to fall prey to doing things that are the wrong things to do, whether it's in Congress or whether it's in my own home. And so, you know, people need somebody that they believe will just not sell out the rest of us for, you know, a few gold coins. And that's the kind of guy I am. Integrity.
Nice. Integrity is a good skill, good virtue. If anybody wants to know more about your campaign, where can they go to look?
Thank you for asking. I have a website. It's a work in progress because I haven't paid someone a lot of money to have the most modern design. But it is my website. It's active, and people contribute to it, as well as see what's going on and learn more about me. And that's easy. watersforsenate.com. And I also have my Facebook site, and that's Alan Waters for Senate. And unlike perhaps a candidate that might be more handled by professional managers, what you'll get is a homey, folksy, regular person's Facebook site that's working really hard to represent the people of Massachusetts and America. That's what you'll see when you go there. So I welcome them to visit it. It's not sanitized. It's alive, and I speak there versus you don't hear from me.
Nice. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to add?
Well, what I'd like to say is this. Again, with my beliefs that we want to grow, you know, we should grow the economy, protect the American culture, and protect the American people. I think that's what the voters of Massachusetts need, and that's what they're going to find in me. That is who I am to the core, someone that is a patriot, someone that cares about people of all races and colors, all economics. I want to be able to help. But I became an independent because I want to be able to work across the aisle and actually bring people together and work with them, from Republicans to Democrats. But an independent can be a catalyst to make things happen, because the parties would have to go through you sometimes for a close vote. I'm actually more powerful if I get elected than Elizabeth Warren or any of the Republican candidates, because an independent centrist, you don't need many, but you can help America bring it from its extremes and help people work together for the common goal of improving this great nation.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.